Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second information session on the WTO Secretariat's analytical work on the role of trade in the production and distribution of COVID-19 countermeasures. Thank you for joining us in person and online. Trade has played a key role during the pandemic as a lifeline for access to food and medical supplies, and as an essential means for manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines, which typically rely on multi-country supply chains. Without cross-border supply chains, it would not have been possible to manufacture and administer the more than 7.5 billion doses of vaccines that have gone into people's arms as of last week. But as we know, access to those vaccines remains highly inequitable. Only 0.7% of these vaccines have gone to people in low-income countries, which are home to nearly 10% of the world's population. Only about 3% of people in low-income countries are fully vaccinated, 7% of people in Africa, compared to over 2/3 in developed countries. Trade has a key role to play in increasing vaccine production and distribution to people in all countries. This makes it important to understand trade flows and trade obstacles. Since early in the pandemic, the WTO Secretariat has been monitoring pandemic-related trade trends and trade policy measures. Thanks to constructive collaboration with members, we have been able to document both trade restricting measures and trade facilitating ones, with the information published both on our website and in our biannual trade monitoring reports. The Secretariat has also produced a series of information notes on a wide spectrum of trade issues related to the pandemic. These notes are also available on our website. One of them looks at global trade in medical products and documents how in 2020, even as the value of global merchandise trade fell by 7.6%, the value of trade in medical products grew by 16%. And by nearly 50% of personal protective equipment and 480% for the textile face masks that have become so familiar to us now. This brings me to the newest product of these analytical efforts, the new COVID-19 vaccine trade tracker, which we launched 2 days ago together with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The tracker is a new generation tool. It brings together data from different sources in the public domain to provide greater transparency on cross-border flows of COVID-19 vaccines, ranging from the countries exporting finished vaccines to the types of supply arrangements under which they're traded. The vaccine trade tracker builds on the WTO's work with the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Health Organization to accelerate the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics to low and middle income countries around the world. In the Multilateral Leaders Task Force, which I serve on, with my counterparts from the other 3 organizations, we are looking for practical solutions to address financing, manufacturing, and trade issues. We are also working to promote greater transparency in vaccine production, distribution, and contracts. I hope you will find the vaccine trade tracker useful and as fascinating as I do. One thing I was struck by is the extent to which the production of traded COVID-19 vaccines is concentrated in a handful of countries. Before the pandemic, 80% of the world's export of vaccines of all types came from 10 countries. The tracker shows us that 94% of traded COVID-19 vaccines come from the 5 leading exporters. This is not surprising given that these vaccines are new, and in many cases, so are the production facilities. But it also points to how far we have to go to achieve a more diversified, decentralized global vaccine manufacturing base, a base that would be more resilient in a future crisis. I would like to now invite Dayong Yu and Edvinas Drevinskas from our statistics team to make a technical presentation of the COVID-19 vaccine trade tracker. Let me take the moment to thank both of them, thank you, for their excellent work on this and on other COVID-related data. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Let's continue the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General. Hello, everyone. Our presentation includes two parts. I will start with a short presentation to give you some background information on the project, the data source, and the methodology we used. My colleague Edwinas will present the tree tracker and go through the key indicators with you. The project started as a technical work to look at the trade aspect of COVID-19 vaccine production, supply, and delivery data. The objective was to measure the vaccine trade flows or cross-border imports and exports of vaccine to better understand the pattern and the trend of the global production and trade. When the project progressed, we think it would be useful to make the data available for members and for the general public to provide greater transparency of vaccine supply and to contribute to the global effort for improving access to vaccines. The tracker was launched on Monday this week. It provides a series of indicators of vaccine trade, supply, and delivery. Figures are grouped by producing economy and manufacturer on the exporting side, and by continent and income group on importing side. It also includes information on supply deal types and vaccination status by continent. The data will be updated on a monthly basis. As the name indicated, the tracker is a joint project of the WTO Secretariat and the IMF. In the past months, the IMF and WTO vaccine teams tied up to work on the raw data and to put together a database which contains bilateral supply and delivery flows between countries and territories. The original information of the database comes from public domain, including data from different international organizations, institutions, as well as from news reports and company announcement. It should be noted that the data is still preliminary, subject to further revision. Therefore, we are looking forward to working with members, manufacturers, and other stakeholders to improve the database with additional information and data. The data behind the trade tracker is not the traditional trade statistic collected by national custom authorities. Traditional data is the basis for most analytical work on international trade. But when we need data for very specific products in high frequency, the traditional data has its weakness in terms of granularity. This problem has been discussed in detail in a Secretariat COVID-19 information note published early this year. You can find the paper on the WTO website through the link on the slide. So instead of traditional data, the tracker uses a vaccine supply and delivery data set. The data set has the information specifically on COVID-19 vaccines. They are precise measurement of COVID vaccine compared with the trade statistic, which normally recorded data under HS 6-digit code 300220. But the code covers all kinds of human vaccines, as well as some key vaccine ingredients. In the data side, vaccine flow are recorded in the number of doses rather than traditional metrics in volume and in value. So number of doses is particularly useful for accessing the progress of vaccination. For example, to estimate the percentage of population that could be vaccinated with existing stock of vaccine. The data side has monthly figure for almost all economies. It also includes additional detail on supply agreement types. My last slide shows how we calculate the vaccine trade flow. The blue boxes and arrows represent the data we have in the database. The blue box on the left is the total doses supplied by this producing economy. The blue arrow on the top, the two blue arrows on the top represent the flow of vaccine shipped from producing economy to receiving economy. We also have the number of domestic use as indicated on the bottom of the box. So it's obvious on the top, the two arrows on the top, we can easily calculate the total export and total imports. This is the case for most of the data pair we have in the database. So the calculation is straightforward. Only for some limited cases, where data is not available, we have to do some estimate. But most of those cases where are related to very small supply delivery flow. So the estimation will not affect the general trade patterns. You can access the tracker through the web link in these slides. We also have an email address that to answer questions and receive to have your suggestions and comments. Now I give the floor to my colleague Edwinas, who is the data expert behind this tracker. Edwinas.
Thank you, Dayong. Now I will give you a live demo of the vaccine trade tracker. Let me share my screen. Okay, currently vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine trade tracker is hosted on the WTO website, WTO.org. Dayong already shared the link earlier. And now I will give you a brief demo of what kind of information you can find inside this COVID-19 vaccine trade tracker. Before going to the numbers, we have some very important disclaimers. First of all, that in this tracker, we track supply, which captures production pretty well, but not all the produced vaccines are currently captured in this vaccine trade tracker. Another important thing is that in this trade tracker, we have vaccines from fill and finish facilities to the administered to the countries or territories where they will be administered, and it does not capture the vaccine active ingredient production, which is also very important in the effort to vaccinate the world. Another important disclaimer is that for vaccines which require only one shot for full immunization, we have doubled the doses, so they are comparable to other vaccine types. In this vaccine trade tracker, we have 6 different chapters. The first one is the summary. Here we have the very broad summary of the current situation in the vaccine supply. In our trade tracker, we capture 8.8 billion of total doses supplied, either via domestic use or implicit trade. Domestic supply in the vaccine trade tracker is 5.9 billion doses. And then implicit trade, so exports or imports, is 2.9 billion doses. In the second chapter, we have information about the exports. This information is divided by producing economy or by supply arrangement type. In the report by producing economy, we have graphs. One of them is cumulative graph over time. So here we can see vaccine supply from the beginning of the pandemic, of the vaccination until end of October. And these exports are cumulative. So here you can see it sums up to the number to 2.9 billion, which I mentioned earlier. Then we also have the monthly breakdown on the vaccines delivered or supplied every month. And this is also further broken down by producing economy. In this report, producing economy is defined as a country or a territory where the final vaccine is made, or so-called fill and finish is completed. Below the two graphs, we also have a table with the numbers as of October 31st. These numbers will be updated for November in a couple of weeks. So let me go to another exports view, which is exports by supply arrangement type. In this vaccine trade tracker, we have identified 5 different supply arrangements. You can see them on the side or in the table. So these are 5 cross-border supply arrangements. Then there is also domestic supply. So the 5 cross-border arrangement types are supply via bilateral deals. So this is a classical deal where the country contacts the factory and they make the deal to deliver vaccines. Then we have supply via COVAX. So it can be either contracted deals with COVAX or donations which were administered by COVAX. We have also direct donations, which are directly donated from one country to another one. And also we have the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust arrangement type. So you can see the data again cumulatively, which sums up to the same 2.9 billion, or monthly. So far, you can see the most of the vaccines were delivered using bilateral deals. Below, we have the same table. Then besides exports in the vaccine trade tracker, we also define imports. In this case, imports are mirror exports. We define imports by 2 different groups. So by income group and then imports by continent. We have the same cumulative graphs and the same monthly graphs where we can see imports by different income group. Below the graphs, we have the table. In this table, besides having only number of doses, we also have doses per 100 people within certain income groups, because the populations are not the same. And then we have the same information provided by the continent. I would like to stress that in this report, we have imports, so trade. So it does not contain domestic supply in these graphs and these tables. The fourth chapter of our vaccine trade tracker is total supply. So here we have total supply, so meaning exports and domestic supply, or imports and domestic supply. In the first panel, we have the total supply by producing economy, and we show the share between domestic use and the exports. We also have the same information in the table, which is again as of October 31st. And then we have by vaccine type. Here you can see different type of different manufacturers, vaccine manufacturers. So here I would like to say that in this vaccine trade tracker, we have the total supply, so not necessary total production, even though these numbers are very close. And some of the vaccines which are currently produced, they are probably still not shipped and they are still in the factories. So these numbers will get updated and will change through time. So then we have the table. In the 5th chapter, we took a deeper look into supply to the continents. So here again, we have total supply, so total doses received by different continents. We can hover over them. And then we have supply to the continent by the arrangement type. So here we can see how many number of doses reach the certain continents by different arrangement types, either it's COVAX or AVAT. And also we have domestic supply. So the number of doses reaching, being produced within the continent. So the countries which are supplying themselves within the continent. So we have these reports for all the 6 continents. And then we have below the arrangement type, we also supplied the continent by producing economy. So detailed information on from where or which countries or economies these continents are getting their vaccines. It has not only top 5 suppliers, but also the detailed information how each supplier are supplying to the continent. So again, 6 different continents, we can scroll through them. And in the last chapter, we try to compare our data, vaccine trade tracker data, to other sources. So in this case, we have number of doses supplied and number of courses supplied from the vaccine trade tracker. So number of courses are, in this tracker case, it's number of doses divided by 2. So to have full immunization, people need to have 2 doses of most of the vaccines. And then for the vaccines where they require only 1 dose, it was adjusted at the very beginning of this project. And then we have 2 other columns which are coming from another database. In this case, it's Our World in Trade, in Our World in Data. And here we have information about person who received, percent of people who received at least 1 dose, and the percent of people who are fully vaccinated. Again, these numbers for both vaccine trade tracker and the Our World in Data are taken as of October 31st. And at the end of the vaccine trade tracker, we have more information about the sources, where the data is coming from, and disclaimer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dayong and Edvinas, for the presentation of the vaccine trade tracker. We now have an opportunity for discussion and responses. And I would like to invite participants to post your comments and questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we've already received a number of questions. So if I may, I'll start posting them. So the first one is, what are the trade figures for least developed countries? Do we have that information?
Yes, we have the information for each country. So what we are going to do is we can add a new group type called LDCs, and then we will make a section in the certain appropriate section of the tracker. Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, very good. I think that is of great interest to a number of members. And this is a related question, which is, would it be possible to have different breakdowns? You can go ahead.
Yeah, breakdown.
The breakdown is, say we have, it can be by different countries, different types of countries. There's no specification, but yeah.
Yes, so we could identify the country breakdowns of interest and then organize and add more panels to the vaccine trade tracker so people could get more detailed information. For example, vaccination status of Northern Africa. So we would need to identify the interested breakdowns.
Okay, thank you. We have a third question here, which I think you've made reference to this, but when will the tracker be updated?
And the tracker will be updated on monthly basis. So the next update, I think in about 1 week. So next week we can update with the November data.
Thank you. We have two questions that are related, so I'll post them together. One is, will the data set behind the tracker be available for download? And then another one says, are you able to share the data set, particularly keen on understanding the breakdown of EU data?
Yes, I think we will make the data that already indicated in the tracker for download. For the country level data, I think we made the decision when we launched the tracker that for the time being, we gave the aggregation by continent or by country groups. But we can consider how to, if there's a great interest, we can thinking about how to provide country level data, give more granularity. But we need to talk with our data partner and make decision later.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me remind participants that they may pose additional questions using the Q&A feature. We have yet another one, which you also referred to it in the sense that we have additional information on the tracker. But the question is, what sources have you used to estimate total supply specifically?
What we have is a data site, but so we indicated the vaccines coming from which country and delivered to which country. So basically the total supply, we just aggregate from the supplying side, then we have the total supply. And we also compare the number with the number disclosed by the manufacturers. So those things is double verified with different ways.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dayong. I think those are the questions that we have received so far. If there are no additional questions, let me just invite everyone again to please check the vaccine trade tracker. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, of course, you can reach out to Dayong and Edvinas, who would be very happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much for your participation. And we will continue to inform delegations as we advance our work to support equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines. Thank you very much for joining us today.